بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In question and answers we kind of get pretty, we get pretty deep and whatever. If there's any prude people, then this would be a good time to leave. Because, we kind of get explicit and intimate and that kind of thing. And there's no children around here, is there? No kids here? No? Not with the children? Anything like that? And I apologize to the organizers of the talk. Maybe it's not what you were expecting. In actual fact, I can't even remember how I was forced to give this talk. I can't, but I really mean it because I made an absolute and firm intention that I would never lecture on this subject ever again. And it lasted 2 years and I'm back here again. And I can't understand how that happened, where it happened, whatever. And I've gone off this whole lecturing thing because I'm just like you guys. There's no difference. You are my peers, and some of you are older than me, some of you are ahead of me in your deen, and I'm behind. And I just anyway. Let's take some of these questions in no particular order or so on. Yeah, it's fine. So, okay. How should you then go about getting married? Looking for the right person. How is someone supposed to propose to the other? Right? First of all, there's no, 5-point plan here, right? Sharia doesn't have a specific set of rules, but it has guidelines. Okay? And guidelines are great. And that's a rahmah, of course. Because imagine if it was specific rules that you can only go in this way, you can only go in that way, whatever. For example, it has to be the man that has to approach. These kind of classic things that women, in our societies spend daylight talking about. I can't go and propose to him. It's always going to be the man who's going to come and propose, and all this kind of rubbish, right? Yeah. Well, actually, it's not rubbish, I suppose, because we can relate to it, can't we? Right? And we talk about the non-Muslims here, not the Muslims. In Islam, there's guidelines, right? It doesn't have to be man has to propose to woman, woman has to propose to man. It's open. The reality of it is that the guidelines are understood easier by understanding what you can't do, if that makes sense. Okay? So if you know what you can't do, then you know that everything else is okay. So what can't you do? You cannot be alone with a member of the opposite sex. Okay? And being alone, right, has almost 2 dimensions. Okay, so 2 dimensions, for example, would be spending some significant period of time conversing in an intimate fashion with one other person, even if you're in a public area. So just imagine a park where there's people playing over there, and then you guys are in the middle. Right? Now, technically speaking, this is not isolation, okay? Because other people can see and people can approach you at any time and so on and so on. And you can run anytime and do something anytime. So isolation is not, technically this is not isolation, right? So here, but this is not something which is correct, because you're making yourself a pseudo-isolated kind of state, right? And that kind of interaction in that situation shouldn't occur. And the classic thing, which is of course impermissible, is for you to be isolated in a room or in an area which does not have access to the outside with a member of the opposite sex. This is haram. Okay? Likewise, to be continuing discussions via other means with a person that you're not married to, where the discussion goes out of the limits of what is necessary, that is also something which is impermissible. So for example, if you send an email to a sister to say that, yes, I will do this work that you said to me, Jazakallah khair, Assalamu alaikum, that's fine. Alright? Or, yes, I'd like to order so-and-so, and thank you, and there's your whatever, that's fine. But when you start saying, right, yeah, I'd like to order this and that, and hey, that's nice, you wear there. Yeah, I'll get that project done, and can we meet up at that time, and so on and so on. It's kind of whatever, and you don't let this explain this to you, everyone knows what, you get that feeling, right? Everyone gets that feeling when you're going past what should be gone. Everyone recognizes that, and the reason your ears are going red, right, is because they are meant to go red at that stage. Alhamdulillah, it's our body's natural reaction. When you're going out from where you should be to where you shouldn't be, then the heart beats has to increase, and you'll feels better, right? And your ears start to go, whatever. You shouldn't be there. And the reason you're there and that's happening is because you've gone too far. So, that's the general guidelines, really. That's it. And other than that, you're okay. So you see, this man, and he sees his sister, and he says, MashaAllah, that is the girl that I want. That is the girl I want. that is the girl that I want. So, what does he do? Then he should either tell another person, for example, his friend whose sister knows her or whatever, or tells his sister himself to go and whatever, or tells another person who's able to convey the message that so-and-so brother is interested in marriage and can he meet and discuss and see what's happening, and then that will then be arranged through the relevant parties, should be with the permission of parents, especially in the case of the girl. And the best way, of course, and the most noble way, and what was classically the understood way, is that the man approaches the parents. And because sometimes that's unrealistic, because he doesn't know the parents at all, and it's going to be an immediate kind of, kind of thing from the parents. So he goes to an intermediary. So he goes to maybe an elder in the masjid, or an uncle that knows someone, blah, 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 who then knows the father, and then speaks to them. So that the initial contact comes from someone that the father respects, okay? And that's very, very important. Respect is very, very important. So when a young whippersnapper upstart comes and says, what's happening, then he kind of looks at him and thinks, what? Yeah, and that's also not going to work. But that's the classical way. That's of course in our society. I mean, as a father, whatever, if I saw someone, I had a daughter that wanted to get married, and some guy came to my door from our times, I'd laugh, really. But I mean, back in the day, of course, it was different, right? When men were men, as they used to say, right? So when man comes to the door, it's not just some bloke that's from whatever university, but this is a man who has been in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, who is a person who spends his nights praying, who spends his days fasting, who's gone and fought jihad and sacrificed his time and his wealth and his money, and that was the community. So when man comes to the door, then you open the door and say, come in, my friend. You understand? So that's something which of course is not the case today. So we have to use our own initiative, right? But the last thing that you want to do is to try and contact this girl directly, because that only leads to further problems. That kind of slippery slope kind of problems that at the beginning doesn't seem like anything, a few words, a bit of chit chat, a quick kind of catch a quick conversation, and then down you go. And that's the problem. And in the meantime, of course, if you're because the question also mentions how do you actually get started. What if you don't even have a particular sister that that you've seen? Then you are allowed to look at another woman for the sake of marriage. And likewise, of course, the opposite. So if you're looking to get married, you are allowed to look at women and say, right, I heard this so-and-so or whatever, and I want to find a person who's religious, or I want to find a person who's active, or I want to find a person who's this or whatever, and you put the word out and you're looking around and you find it, and you find the person that you're looking for. Even the companions, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, in many authentic narrations, you see even spy on certain women. So just watch out behind them corners, girls, because there'll be someone looking. Yeah. But like I said, it's not something which is haram, because the intention is solely and only for the case that yes, this girl is potentially someone I want to marry, and it has to be someone who's been specified, not just spy on everyone. Right? We're talking about this is the sister I'm interested in, I just want to just get a clear idea of what's going on. So you might have one or two extra different looks to make sure that everything's okay, and so on. Are married couples allowed to bath and shower together? Yes, they are, absolutely. Should I answer that again? Are married couples allowed to bath? No, they're not allowed. They are. I mean, is there a problem with that? No?
Just a question itself.
Can you explain why?
Can I explain why? Okay, good. The explanation why. Why? Because the hijab, all right? The hijab is the protection of what's called the awra. The awra, okay, one's awra is that part of the body which can never be seen by another person. Okay? Now, awrah is divided into two, like soft and hard awrah, you can almost call it, right? Yani there's certain things that, you have the concept of mahram and non-mahram, right? Mahram is that person that you cannot get married to due to either the family link, right? Because he's your father, right? Or because he's your brother, or because he's your son, or because he's your uncle, or whatever, right? So that person is mahram. You are not allowed to get married to that person, okay? And likewise, if you've been breastfed by someone, and then her husband, and so on. So the one becomes mahram either by lineage, or by marriage, which is a detailed thing, we don't want to get into that now, or by breastfeeding, again, detailed, don't want to get into it now. These are the people who you can't get married to. If you can't get married to a person, then it means that you don't have to cover as much of your awrah in front of them. So for example, classically, you don't need to cover your hair, you don't need to cover your feet, you don't need to cover your arms or something like that. You can walk around pretty much relaxed in the house, okay? But then for the woman, then you have the hard area, okay, of awrah, which is not seen by anyone, okay? Neither other women or neither other mahrams or anything. And that is the private parts and so on, okay? And likewise for the male. Right, the male has a hard awrah between his belly button, effectively, and his knee, or the top of the knee, or even half the thigh, according to difference of opinion amongst the ulama. This part of awrah cannot be seen by any other person. Okay, right? And the exception is for the partner, for the one who is married, because there is no awrah between the wife and the husband. There is no awrah. That's the reason. Okay. There's no awrah, there's nothing hidden between the wife and thing. And if there was, that'd be pretty useless, isn't it? It'd be pretty pointless, you know what I'm saying? What kind of marriage is that? No. So, if you wish to get to know someone before marriage, how should you go about it? Acting in accordance with Sharia law. I think that's covered, yeah? I think that's kind of, dealt with. Question. I've been led to believe that you are allowed to interact with a female when absolutely necessary. At university, you cannot last the course without seeking help from females at some stage. But if you don't make friendship, how is this possible? Someone who we regularly meet at uni, for example, and always greet, can be considered a friend. Is this not allowed? I might have just said that the wrong way around. Anyway, the point here again, it's going back to the principles in the main talk and what I just said now. That for a need. So for example, the women who are studying, okay, you have to look at the lecturer. You have to take notes down. Women who are buying something from a man have to look at the person and deal with things. And likewise the other way around. And so there's a many exempt categories, okay, from the normal laws of interaction. So normally there wouldn't be this discussion that goes on between people, but when there is a need, that happens. And so for example, if you're in a situation, and it's not good by the way, it's not good. If you can avoid interacting with a woman in your course, and you can generally, except in a few circumstances where you're forced by random whatever to sit with women and so on. I can tell you, I went to university. I went to the best university, Manchester. Okay. I went to Manchester University 4 years, and I can tell you that I don't think that I was forced to maybe I can in the 3 years or whatever, maybe 5 times I think that I was forced to interact with a woman in terms of group work or anything like that, because pretty much we were given free reign. I don't think things have changed that much. So I think that if you really want to control yourself, whatever, and avoid it, and it should be avoided. It should be avoided, there's no doubt about that. But if you need to work together for some kind of reason, then that is permissible. That is permissible for a legal reason, you can work together. But I advise you, I only advise you this because I know that it's good for you. I know that it's good for you because it's what the Prophet ﷺ said is good for you. And I've seen it myself, and people have seen it themselves, and you know people, and you know friends, and whatever. Increase the interaction, increase the time. It's an exponential relationship of time together and desire building. You make the graph, it's there. Extra minutes, do it across by minutes. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just enough few words, whatever. It's like magic, subhanallah. Love, love. They spend, the Arabs, right, the Muslims, we're the masters, we're the love doctors, by the way. Right? If you want to hear about love and the beauty of love and romance and describing women and describing beauty, then come and look at our books. Come and look at the books of poetry and the books of Jannah and the books of describing the world and so on. The ulama of Islam used to write reams upon poetry about beauty and women and so on and so on. So we recognize more than anyone else the power and the addictive nature of love, the addictive nature of the relationship between men and women, which is why we, as much as humanly possible, decrease the contact in between. Because the Islamic system is not like the Western or the secular system. We don't try and solve a problem after it's occurred. Islamic system always deals with the problem before it occurs. Alright, we absolutely cut off all the possible avenues. So kissing, for example, the reason there's no hadith that says don't kiss, there's no hadith, but it's zina because it is a path to zina. So it's haram. And therefore, the looking, and therefore that becomes haram. And therefore, that which causes you to look more, that becomes haram. And then that which causes you to look even more, the cause of that, i.e. increased contact, that becomes haram. That's how the Sharia operates. It looks at a final goal and it recognizes, right, that's a problem. Is it real? Yes. How are we going to deal with it? Right, we're going to cut off all of the roots and all of the possible paths to that problem. That is how Sharia deals with it. So therefore, only you as an individual will be able to know what you're doing is dodgy, what you're doing is too far, what you're doing is going beyond the limits. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that take fatwa, istafti qalbak, take fatwa from your heart. You're in a situation, ask your heart, because you know, and I know you know, because I know, everyone knows, it's human nature, when you are getting into somewhere where you shouldn't be going. Now, how would you advise young people to go about finding spouses, especially if parents expect you or don't mind you finding your own partner and keeping it halal, of course? I think that once you understand what the priorities are in finding your partner, so if you're a female, then you should be looking for a husband who is a person of religion, okay? And a person of religion, likewise, of course, for the man looking for the woman, right? You should be looking for a person of deen. And I tell you why. Because a person can be beautiful, and a person can be rich, and a person can be from a very noble family, but if the deen is not good, then the relationship is going to be on rocky grounds. Why? Because you want to progress, don't you? That's the whole aim in life, that you want to progress in your religion. Because when you get married, I can tell you this, the Islamic work, right, or my effectiveness in Islamic work and anything that I've been able to study and do, although from one point of view it became difficult when I got married in terms of seeking knowledge, because that you need to really do very quickly and put a lot of hours in and spend a lot of time to, by yourself and so on, that other things from my Islamic obligations and Islamic work became so incredibly easier when I got married. Okay, so incredibly easy to know that I had a system, that I had the security of being able to come home and making sure that things were okay and that things were solid for me to be able to refer back in the day, and all of the classic benefits that one person takes from stability. A marriage is stability. A marriage is an opportunity for you to do what is most beneficial for you. So therefore, if you don't have that respect between the two people, and that respect between the two people is not going to come because you're good looking, or because you're wealthy, or because you're whatever, but it's because the woman recognizes that the Prophet ﷺ has commanded her to obey her husband. And likewise the other way around. The Prophet ﷺ has commanded, the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُ أَهْلِكُمْ. The best of you are those who are best to their families. So the Prophet ﷺ made it very, very clear. The best of you are those who are best to their families. In another riwayah, another narration, the best of you are خَيْرُ لِنِسَائِكُمْ. The best of you are those who are best to your women. So the Prophet ﷺ has made it very, very clear how the man should treat and act with the woman. And so when one knows this from the deen and respects the deen, then they're going to make everything so easy for you. They're going to give you what you wish, what you want, making you happy all the time is going to become an act of religious worship for that person. So if you get married to a person who's fantastically good looking and rich or whatever, but has no respect for the religion, and respect for the religion, I mean, just because he prays or something, just like that, whatever, is not respect for the religion per se. Respect for the religion means that when the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, and when the Prophet ﷺ's name is mentioned, and the person's like, whoa, that's the Prophet ﷺ, and that's a statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. And yani his demeanor changes, and his priorities change. And that's what's got to be done. That's what's obligatory upon me. That's what I need to do now. A person, that you get married to a person like that, then you can guarantee your future. You can guarantee your happiness. Because that person is now under the law of Allah and the law of Islam, and it's impermissible for him to mistreat you, to make you unhappy, to oppress you, and so on and so on. You are protected by Islam. So if you get married to a person who does not respect Islamic law and has an Islamic character, then what do you think you will get? And likewise for the men. And even more so for the men. Because the men, their greatest problem is that because of the increased sexual desire, they put an increased value upon beauty. And that's just a waste of time. I mean, for crying out loud, how long do you think a woman is going to remain beautiful for? I mean, really, honestly. I mean, I say this and I'm going to say it and everyone's going to go, oh, whatever, right? But, you get married, right? And after a little while, she doesn't look like what she looked like when you got married to her, alright? Okay? Believe that. And by the way, nor do you, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, don't just think that she's kind of just lost all the looks, because you don't look exactly like Brad Pitt either. Right? And in fact, the biggest problem, of course, when the Muslims get married is that, they just become slouches, overweight and this and that, whatever, they think it's being religious. And it's a disaster, when I got married, my weight doubled. Doubled. Is that possible? Can you imagine that? I doubled in my weight when I got married, over a period of, 3 years or something like that. I mean, it's just stupid. And practicing Muslims believe that that's okay. Because, you're not doing anything, you're teaching people, and you're doing da'wah, and you're doing this and that, whatever you're doing. You're working, and I'm a family man, and got her in the bag, and what else have I got to look forward to, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, this whole mentality starts to kick in. And it's disgrace, it's an absolute disgrace. She deserves you to be in prime form, and you deserve her to be in prime form for you. But even that, attraction and maintaining a continual attraction has its own wisdoms and has its own limits. Don't think that beauty is the... Let me tell you something. The majority of people who are still married today is not because the other person's beautiful. Do you believe that? If you don't believe that, you better believe that. You think that there's not more beautiful women out there in the world than my wife? You don't think that my wife thinks there's more beautiful men out there than I am? But the reason that we're together is not because of beauty. And that's what people misunderstand. That's why they say love blinds. Because it just takes over the mind, takes over the heart, and your senses just start to just lose their priorities, start to lose the reality. I mean, how stupid can a person be when they think that beauty is going to be some incredibly amazing concept that's going to keep you fixed and hooked for the next 50 years? I mean, what world are you on? I mean, what is wrong with the people who believe like that and think like that? I mean, does anyone need any further proof? Look at your parents for crying out loud. You know what I'm saying? I have no offense to anyone's parents. I'm sure they're good looking in their own way, but the reality is they're not still together. They didn't create, beautiful people like yourselves because they consider beauty to be the absolute priority until today, right? And they didn't give you the stable homes, inshallah, that most of you have had. They haven't given you the love that you have gained from them, and the good upbringing, inshallah, from them that you have, because they consider beauty to be the absolute priority. No, they consider things like respect and parental choice and religion and future and ability to produce and ability to develop. These kind of factors need to take place. So the reason I mention this now in the answer to this question is that the most important thing in trying to find a spouse is to first determine what you're looking for and why you're looking for what you're looking for. Try and determine your priorities and understand your priorities. Understand what it is that really you hold as important, what should be important to you. And once you understand, now that you understand that the person that I want should be religious, good looking, not ugly, not whatever, should be able to support himself and not be absolutely poor, should come from some kind of good family or whatever. But religion, very, very important. You want a person who doesn't take interest in other women, is maintaining their distance. You see their history is like that, they want to keep... Why is that person, do you think that the person is doing that because he doesn't like girls? There's no single man who doesn't like girls. There's no single man who doesn't like the opposite sex. So if you see a person who's doing that eyes down, walking around, whatever, then you know that he is fighting a great jihad against himself. Don't cut him down for the fact that because he's not all over you, that he's a nobody. Rather give him respect for that. And I can tell you something, that you might not look at such a person as a potential marriage partner at that time, okay? But maybe you put him down in the list because of maybe he doesn't look like the greatest person in the world, but you'll regret it so much afterwards if you went for the better looking, lesser being person. My goodness me, would you regret it? It goes for both sides. So once you're able to then determine what you want as a priority, then you just got to move in them circles. And then in university it's very easy. Then you're moving in circles of Islamic work and Islamic dawah and the masjid and so on and so on. And once you're in that circle of learning and conferences and talks and whatever, and you recognize that only the people that have some interest in their religion are going to have interest in these things. All by word of mouth, you know that yes, so-and-so started practicing, and so-and-so's been practicing, and so-and-so prays, and so-and-so studies, and so-and-so writes, whatever. Then you know, yeah, that's the kind of person I'm interested in. And then you start making inquiries, and that is how you find the kind of person, the spouse that you are looking for. The scholars who did not get married for the sake of talab al-ilm, for seeking knowledge, are they guilty of not following the sunnah, i.e. deliberately turning away from the sunnah? I am talking not about ulama like Ibn Taymiyyah and Nawawi, who had slave girls, but like Sheikh Yunus al-Junpuri, I don't know, from Saharanpur, who is a muhaddith. Also Sheikh Abu Ghudda wrote a book on some of these scholars, yet it has been refuted by one of the Saudis. Is this allowed or recommended? I don't know of the refutation of Sheikh Abu Ghudda. Was one of my favorite scholars actually. First of all, I don't know how easily we can determine and make the difference between certain scholars not getting married and other scholars different times not getting married and so on and so on. Okay, let me tell you something. There are people, right? If you don't move in these circles, then it's difficult. I'm assuming that, I don't know who wrote this. If it's a sister, then it will be very difficult for her to understand. If it's a brother, less difficult, but still difficult if they don't study ilm, okay? Talab al-ilm, when you start getting into studying serious knowledge, right? I mean, we're talking serious, just serious knowledge, we're not getting into details, right? It is like a drug. It's like a drug. I mean, I'm a nobody, really I am, okay? I'm a very, very small student of knowledge. But I know that if I didn't have the responsibilities of children and work and kids and whatever, whatnot, then all I'd want to do is to read books all day, every day, and just someone just come and feed me water and drink and that's it, and food and that's it, really. I wouldn't want to look at anything else, whatever, whatnot. I mean, that's what I think, I suppose. I mean, obviously, I'd probably collapse after a little while, wanting, my desires to be mad food and sexual and this and that, whatever. I mean, obviously. But the reality is that me at this level, I can see, I've tasted, I'm a nobody, as I said. I've tasted the addictiveness of knowledge and the izzah of knowledge, the respect that one gains with knowledge internally and externally. Then you now lift that up to that level up there of the ulama, the leaders of this religion, the guides of this religion, who take upon themselves the responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised them for specifically in the Quran. وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the people of knowledge by grades, by rank, by status. These people have a massively increased responsibility and an increased reward and honor. And at the same time, not only do they have this great reward on offer, but they really are addicted to studying. And they recognize that to look after a wife, and look after children, and look after this and whatever, will really be a burden and a problem and something that will keep them from actually progressing. Now that is only going to happen to an incredibly small number of people. And that's why when you go through Islamic history, even as the system makes differentiation between Nawawi and Ibn Taymiyyah, you'll find in the classic scholars 10, 20, 50, 100 out of millions. And today, the system mentions 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, or brother whoever, mentions a few out of the millions of scholars we've had in the last 100 to 200 years. So it's always going to be the very small exception that are going to be able to do that. And remember, marrying a woman, or marriage is not an obligation. Its general ruling is that it's sunnah. But it becomes an obligation if one is not able to control their desires. So the second that you are having to look longer at a woman, or you are having to look at a woman having to look longer at a man, or you start to have thoughts, or you start to have problems, and you start to have difficulty, that is now it. You have now stepped into the haram. That's what the Prophet ﷺ then said, that فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ, and get married. Get married. And if you can't, then you start fasting. Because once that happens, you have to get married now. Now it becomes an obligation. And if you can't, it's an obligation to start fasting according to the majority of the scholars. An obligation to start fasting. Once you have that problem, you can't control yourself, your taqwa, your iman can't control it, you can't get married, you have to start fasting. So therefore, the reality, the reasons are clear. They wanted to develop their religion, they wanted to save the religion, they wanted to develop themselves, and that drug of knowledge took over. But that's an incredibly small minority, which cannot be used for any basis of evidence or used as any example for anyone else. Because the example of the sunnah is for the example of the majority of people. And the Prophet ﷺ is khairun nas, of course, in that. You said it is best to get married ASAP, but don't you think there's a maturity level that needs to be reached first, and some learning about the responsibility of marriage, i.e. not to be taken lightly? I agree. I fully agree. And our problem, of course, is that we have ages and ages that have been narrated to us from the Sunnah, when, as I said, women were very young, but they were women, and men were very young, but they were men, right? And that is, of course, different. They're taking on responsibility of serving for the home and bringing up people, and had gone and done business and fought and so on. Whereas the women had been, getting married and seen life and tough and so on. And you've seen that if you go back to your own countries, whether it's India, Pakistan, or Africa, or Arab countries, you've seen in your villages young girls that you couldn't imagine someone from here who's at 10 years old playing with their teddy bear and not being able to do anything, whereas over there a 10-year-old is fully looking after children, going out and working in the houses and cleaning and sweeping and looking after all the affairs in the home. And in fact, in the Muslim countries, the younger girls in the practicing households, it's the younger girls that are maintained in the house to run all the house affairs. Why? Because they trust them, they're good at it, and they are too young to be considered to be a fitna for the owner of the house. Okay, so that there's not a mahram problem. So why do you think that they use the animal? Because they are so mature. That's why. And naturally, we're in a society where immaturity is the norm, not maturity. The men are just a joke, right? I mean, you look at the times now, we look at ourselves, a joke. The women, you can't call them women, it's just a joke again as well. When you're comparing it, I mean, it's a reality. It's not picking anyone. I'm also part of the men, so I come under that thing. And the women, you've got to accept it. Compare yourself to the abilities of your mothers, and then think about comparing yourself to some great-great-grandparents and your development at the age that you're in. And it is no comparison. The maturity levels aren't there. It's all about exposure. We've been brought up in cotton wool in this society. We've been growing up in such a privileged position. It's just incredible. I mean, you heard in the news today, right? That they're worrying about 25, that children are going to be soon having 25 immunizations or vaccines. Okay, 25. And then I got to work today and I opened up the drug alert kind of thing, and I saw it there in front of my eyes. A new meningitis C vaccine, a new pneumococcal vaccine, a new this vaccine, new that vaccine. Does your mind in? This is covered, diphtheria is covered, XY is covered, XY. And you know what was really interesting is I went on to read the statement of Liam Donaldson, who's the chief medical officer or whatever, and he found a really pertinent point. He said, we're introducing this, and despite the concerns and the worries of certain groups of people, we are introducing this to ensure that our children have the best possible start in life. And that's praiseworthy and is good, but that super protection has caused this kind of, this child mentality that sticks with us until 15, 20, 25 years old. You couldn't trust a person at 20 years old to go and run the house and business and so on. Is that the reality or not? And so when you recognize that there is immaturity, then yes, maybe you do need to slow down and say, well, I'm not mature enough, or the other person's potentially not mature enough, and so therefore then you have to then take other measures. You have to then start to control your desires more, or you have to start fasting more. That's just the reality. Maturity is important. It is important, but that does not mean that we should just write off getting married young. And that does not mean that those who get married young the marriage is necessarily written off. Because that's not the case either. Because many times, young people who are immature get married and they become mature very, very quickly. And there's a khair in that. And Sharia does not somehow write that off as a possibility. It does not write it off as a possibility. And in fact, marriage and the marital relationship and the marital responsibilities make a person more mature, and it brings maturity to a person quicker than any other process. Quicker than any other process. So you shouldn't just write off the fact that, people are immature, they laugh a lot, joke a lot, and so on and so on. You shouldn't get married because it's immature. No. Find a person who's good, that you see the good in them, man and woman, and then get married to them. Because that marriage in itself is what completes half the deen. And that completing half the deen is like completing half the maturity. Because only an immature person has half a religion. Because religion is all about maturity. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that half of your iman is completed, half of your religion is completed. That's the whole link to that. Maturity in itself is found in taking the responsibility as a husband, as a breadwinner, as a father, as the one who has to now deal with new rulings to protect his wife and her rights and her issues and so on and so on. Okay, I'm going to take these remaining questions very, very quickly. About the friends topic, when you said you can't have friends that is the opposite sex, how does one interact with each other, especially in university, without being friends or friendly? I mean, obviously, with the opposite sex, I really don't believe that you need to have a friend from the opposite sex. Giving salam, alaikum salam, that's fine. But really, is there a need for us to be friendly, loose with the other people? And I'm not even being loose as in being blasé with the rest of the people. I just mean, is there any real need to develop any sort of relationship with the opposite sex other than what is necessary? There isn't. I mean, if there is, then tell me if I'm wrong. Really. I mean, write again and, say, I challenge you at the top, so then I pick it up. Yeah? Because I just can't see it. I mean, I could be wrong. I really could be. But I mean, we maintain a civil relationship. You don't abuse the other person. You just, you ask how you are or whatever. Then that's fine, and in the scheme of things. But as I said, your heart knows. You do know. You're a very good judge of your own character and a very good judge of your own behavior because you know what you can't do. You know when things are getting dangerous because, as I said, don't really do that whole thing again, yeah, when it happens to the body and all that kind of thing, because I've just done it once and did a bestie of myself, right? You know when you start to get that feeling that you're going into the forbidden area, right? You know that things are getting just a bit too cushy, yeah? What if you marry with two people? What if you marry with two people not really in deen? Then one of you comes into her deen, but the other is not as willing. What do you do? I'm assuming that two people get married and one starts practicing and the other one doesn't, right? Or hasn't. This point is a real major problem of our time. A real major problem of our time. And what the main cause? The main cause is usually the husband who starts to practice by going out and studying and going circles and leaves the girl at home to cook the roti and look after the mom and blah 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 and deal with the house and whatever. And forgets that, hold on, this is I'm meant to go and study and learn and go to iman building talks and whatever. So does she. And that's what's going to happen if you leave her to just rot by the wayside at home, and you're out there getting all these iman boosts, and you're listening to these lectures and khutbahs and writing all this studying, learning about this and that, and doing hifz and doing hadith and whatever, and she miskins at home and doing nothing, right? Trying to do the whole thing by herself, reading books and listening to something on the internet or something. I mean, come on. So always it happens a lot. Unfortunately, I can think of just straight away 3 divorces in the last whatever due to a person who's really practicing, the man, and the woman, miskin, she's not practicing. You can't blame the religion and the husband totally for a woman not practicing, but you can see how it happened if they started off at the same time. They started off both not practicing at the same time. And obviously that is an added reason for you to be careful when you get married to your partner, that you know. How can you know someone is truly practicing if you're restricted in terms of getting to know them? Very good question. Very good question. And that's why you need to have a very solid approach to the meetings that you have. And you can have as many as you wish, as long as it's done in the correct way, with the parents there, with other people there. Ask the questions that matter. You don't need to ask everything and know everything. And as I said, you don't need to prioritize certain things that you thought was a priority before. Because these things develop in marriage. As I said, if you think that you're going to go and try and marry someone who's your best friend, because you know their every in and out, the reality is that who said that marriages work when the other person knows every other person, every single ins and outs over the last 2-3 years of a relationship? Who said that that's the case? Is greater than those who had really extended kind of contact before marriage. There's no proof of their statement that you need to know someone so incredibly well. No, you don't need to. I challenge that. The Sharia allows you to get enough information for you to make up your mind to make that decision. And then tawakkal ala Allah, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the whole point of this. This is an action of ibadah. Make sure you get the priorities first. Make sure you try and find the priorities. That you look at the person and you seek advice, you seek people. Obviously, you just can't rely upon your own ability to see something. Take advice, speak to their friends, and get other people to give you opinions upon these people or the families, and get other people involved. And as you normally would do for any important decision. Everyone knows that when you want to make an important decision, you will research, you will find out certain opinions. You'll go to whatever. This is maybe slightly random, but why is it that a girl may not go to university away from home, i.e. like away from home? The specific hukam upon a woman traveling, okay, comes under the general precept in Sharia to try and protect the honor of the woman, okay, and because the woman, especially in a society like today, and even back in the day, a woman by herself is seen as vulnerable. And I don't think it needs to be proved to anyone. And the Sharia requires that Islam takes the izzah of the woman, whether our own women, married, whatever, or just any Muslim woman, Muslimah from the Ummah, incredibly seriously. For us, every single Muslimah on the street, whatever her level of practicing or whatnot, is like she should be regarded like our sister, like our real sister. Okay? So anything that threatens her safety or puts her at any form of risk, and remember, she is at risk. Not sometimes an obvious risk, of just being attacked, but she's at risk due to her certain inclinations, her certain weakness in emotion, her desires or her easiness, for example, to be persuaded in certain ideas, her easiness, for example, or her increased gullibility in falling for someone. And that's a fact. This is those things that I can just, this is not the joking part, this is the serious part, right? That women themselves, okay, when they fall in love, it happens often easier than the man and deeper than the man. And that means she's at risk. And she's out there in a situation where people can take advantage of her. And if the women are now thinking, how patronizing and how whatever, then now, I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. If you can't accept that, then fine. Sharia says that. Sharia believes that the woman needs to be protected, and that's why it requires a mahram to be available as much as close as possible, someone to look after her needs, and so on and so on. We just try to protect the situation. I only have a few minutes left. What's the Islamic ruling of jokes, and is it allowed to shave the beards in Islam? The Islamic ruling of joking is allowed as long as you don't go and do the filthy and haram and all that kind of thing. And as for the shaving beards in Islam, of course, haram. The shaving of a beard is haram, okay, for the man, right? For the woman, it's good, but you've got to shave your beard. The thingy. Shaving. Shaving is what is haram. As for trimming and so on, and keeping a short beard, then inshallah that's something permissible. Inshallah, according to certainly the opinion that I follow, and to allow a beard to grow fully, right? To at least, or maybe even perfectly, a fist length, then that is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And to keep it tidy and trimmed is something permissible, and there's no problem with that, inshallah. Is it possible for a young woman studying to get married and balance her education and career? Yeah, I do believe so. It is. I have to say that, it is difficult, but it is possible. And there are certain women, for example, in certain careers like like law or medicine, where they believe that they have an extra obligation because there's less women in there, that field. Then yeah, fair enough. It's a possible argument. Not always the case, but maybe if one particular girl is very talented and she believes and recognizes her own talent and recognizes she could become and really do some benefit, then yeah, fair enough. Then she should maybe then marry someone who has that lesser kind of requirements. Because really, I have no doubt, and in my personal opinion, as I said, it's very difficult. I believe strongly that the relationship and that the family will suffer. They really will. Alongside the need for educated women and professions to be developed for the women and so on, I really know and believe. I look at my wife, and I think to myself, there would be no marriage if she was working. It just wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be possible for me, to continue and do what I do? Would it be possible for my children? Would it be possible for my home? And she recognizes it wasn't possible, and she has absolutely no desire. And actually, when I'm discussing Islam, when I'm lecturing to non-Muslims, okay, the non-Muslim women, it's the greatest thing that they find about Islam, that they can just sit at home and don't have to work. They love it, especially working women. They think they're working to get some kind of support, and then they recognize that we tell them that. Then they always ask you, so are you married, and how many kids you got, and whatnot. And they hear that your wife has never ever worked, ever, not lifted a, whatever. I mean, outside of home. Like she doesn't work at home anyway. But the reality is that outside they see that as wow, subhanallah. Yeah, well, they don't say subhanallah. We say subhanallah. They come like really, right? And so don't take this lightly about trying to balance careers and professions and thinking that it's going to work in a marriage. I feel I am very close to bringing a non-Muslim woman to Islam with the help of Allah. What are the boundaries? Is it permitted for me to speak to her as a Muslim man? It is permitted. Same boundaries apply. Same boundaries apply. As soon as you know that you've gone above the necessary the limits, you've got to pull away. You've got to stop. And the reality is that the limits come up very quick and very sudden. So the best and safest thing to do is to transfer it over to some of your sisters here. And you have really active sisters in this society. The first time in my entire life, by the way, that I've had something arranged by a sister. Okay. This is your university, by the way. Take that as a praise or take that as a dhan, take that as a criticism, however you wish to take it. But you have plenty of people here who can deal with non-Muslims and women's situations. Your women are much more active than your men. And look at the numbers. I mean, subhanAllah. And actually, from my own experience, when we have study circles, and we have, for example, I teach in Manchester, and the women regularly outnumber the men 2 to 1. The women are always writing notes. The women don't go anywhere without a notebook. The women are always memorizing. The women are always writing everything that they hear. Because women have much more greater inayah for the lesson. And in reality, maybe it's because they need it more, because they have less of an opportunity to have exposure to that. But at least they take the opportunity. So men, these days, in the modern kind of dawah things with women like that doing everything, and who needs any men to do that kind of stuff? Yeah. As a woman, how do you get married when you don't have any proposals and you don't know anyone to get married to and your parents aren't that interested either? And you have to go through, that's pretty depressing, guys, you know what I mean? I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case with any Muslim woman. Really, I don't. SubhanAllah. And if you're this woman, come speak to me. Come speak to me. Okay, I mean that. If you really think that you're in this situation, come speak to me. I'll find you a husband. Don't worry. Man and woman can't be alone on one-to-one basis, and third is shaitan. How about internet and chatting? People do meet in this way and leads to some marriage. What is your view? Is it haram? My view is that it is one of those interactions that has its necessity, limits, like every other interaction, whether speaking or whether on the phone or whether internet, change the mode, it's all the same. You maintain a certain limit, and then you will know once you've gone too far. Some of you have seen I don't promote. I don't promote too much use of the website. I have my own, and there's many people who have their own, and I'm not into promoting sites, so I won't even tell you about that. But there is one site that I've seen that has a very funny cartoon of a mock MSN conversation between men and the women, practicing of course. And I like it because it's so true, because that's what happens in universities. The men and women who are practicing think that somehow they're God's gift to Islam and Islam society, and they're not going to come under no kind of fitna or any kind of problem, right? And so the conversation always in these cartoons always start off with the sister Nadia and brother Abdul kind of thing, right? And they say, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, and did you do this work? And within 2-3 lines, it's gone right over to, hey, you look really nice, and it's very, very funny. And you'll find that on the internet. You'll find it in all of these forums. I'm sure that your own websites will have some links to it as well. If you just see the cartoons, it just illustrates how easily it happens. I mean, that's done in a very funny way, but in a realistic way, it's true. MSN and these kind of things, and these chat systems and whatnot, they're just like every other mode of communication. Really, it's just you've got to control yourself. Now, what advice would you give to young Muslims who are not in a position to marry but want to? Fasting is a solution, yes, but its effects may not last. Wallahi, that's a good question as well, to be honest. Yani, a person has to have more control of oneself, because fasting is meant to be the absolute end. Because a man to be fasting continuously is something, difficult, realistically. I mean, it's something which is, difficult, especially in our country. I mean, everyone's been enjoying short days and whatever, fasting and relaxing and, early finishes, late starts, whatever. Imagine having to fast continuously throughout the summer, where we don't even know when Fajr's starting, we don't even know when Maghrib's ending, we don't even know what's happening. The day starts at God knows what time, and 9, 10 o'clock, and the sun still hasn't set, and we're still worrying what's going to happen when fasting comes around again at that time. And it is a difficult thing, and one has to try and believe that the fast on a continual basis is the last kind of option. You really have to try and, as I said, appreciate the danger. One who appreciates the danger and appreciates the wisdom of Sharia and dealing with that danger will find it easier. But you have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. And the Prophet ﷺ, is a beautiful hadith. The Prophet ﷺ has said in a context narration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps 3 people. Specifically helps 3 people. One of them is a person who wants to get married, in order to protect oneself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps that person. So you've got to make yourself sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and use the wasa'il, the means and modes to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to achieve that aim. And you will be helped from places that you have not even considered, you've never thought of. The help will come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe you'll be put in a position to get married, and then end the story. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things easy for you, and then you'll get some help. And to finish off, is this maybe a question? Right, okay. Introduced marriages, talking over the phone for several months before marriage, is this sinful? Introduced marriages, talking over the phone for several months before marriage, is this sinful? I'm assuming that nikah has not occurred, the Islamic contract has not been completed, and it's just a continual conversation. For haram, to say something haram is difficult, by the way. Right? It's not something which is, I just say it's haram, but that's haram. So I don't want to know, I don't want to say it's haram, or I can't say it's haram, or whatever. What I can say though, is that, and this is a very important point actually, I should have made it before in the talk, early on in the first part, right? That, in this situation, this constant contact with the idea that you're going to get married, but you don't have any guarantee of that marriage, and before marriage. The reason why that's a problem is because, commonly, something happens and the situation splits up. Or something happens from externally that causes the whole thing to end. And that's fine, because you haven't done nikah, right? In a normal classic situation, if you had the basic level of interaction, the 2 parties were happy, and then you step back and just look forward to the day of walima and getting together and enjoying your first night and so on. That model compared to this one, where, right, you've met up, you're happy now, potentially you're going to get married. One year, one group of parents are saying, yeah, whatever, another group is saying, no, we want her to finish the degree, another one saying blah, blah, and then it gets pushed down for a year and a half or 2, and you guys are constantly in conversation, you're saying, no, we're not going to meet up because that's haram, but we're going to at least keep in contact, email, and so on. When you keep this contact, right, well, you shouldn't be. This is what I'm advising, you shouldn't be. Well, obviously what happens? The desire grows, the love grows, the attraction grows, the friendship grows, right? Now, you're not married, right? Technically, you're nothing. You're 2 prospective, people who are going to get married. And someone comes and the parents decide X and decides Y, and you can think of your own reason. Put your own reason in this gap, okay? I can tell you that in the last couple of years, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 cases I can specifically remember of people that were in this exact situation. The parents then decided not to let the marriage go ahead. They were not aware of how much contact had developed in between, and then they were then forced to get married to other people. Forced in a gentle sense, right? With good reasons and whatnot. And both of the people are now unhappy in their marriage and in secret contact with each other in their new marriages. Is that what Islam wants? It doesn't, of course it doesn't. So when you hear, firstly, that can we talk, it sounds innocent, of course it does. It's no major issue, you're chatting over the phone, you're going to get married soon. When you look at it from that side, but look at it from this side. And now you realize that actually no, it's not as so rosy as that. There's a reason why Sharia tries to minimize these interactions, because Sharia recognizes the strength of emotion, the strength of love and lust and desire. It recognizes it. And it's very, very careful about it. That's why it says, listen, let's chill on that idea, chill on that concept. And that's why we try and keep these things separate, so that love doesn't develop, so that you are able then, as soon as you're able to come in, you're able to then walk away as well without ramifications. So if you don't, not only do you ruin your own and fall into the haram, you ruin one miskin woman who's just got married, you ruin other miskin marriage, you ruin other parents' ideas, and it's destruction. That's why I said before, being selfish and not being able to control oneself is a destruction to yourself and a destruction to the rest of society as well. That's why people have to understand their responsibilities. Please could you explain this with regards to the caste system many parents hold? The reality is that parents have the right to recommend people to get married and so on, and who to get married to, etc. But the reality is that they can't force you. They can't force you into that situation, and I want to say that not all the time is their recommendation a bad one. I'll say that. Don't give the parents some credit. I know that a lot of the time they really mess things up, right? But a lot of the time they're looking out for some benefits that you're not seeing due to your immaturity or due to your inexperience, whatever, that they've seen. Okay? But for a person to be religiously, racially kind of, flippant about he's of that caste and he's of that's haram, of course. You can't get married to him because he's a Gujarati, you can't get married to him because he's Pakistani, or you can't get married to him because he's a Bengali or whatever. That's just bakwas, isn't it, really? Of course, no space for that in the Sharia. There's a few other questions, which unfortunately I don't think there's any time left, and I'm tired, to be honest. My throat is hurting. Barakallahu feek. And like I said, I asked you to forgive me for the fractured nature of the talk, because I wasn't looking forward to coming. I really didn't want to do it. And but anyway, it was really nice to see you all. Barakallahu feek. I've taken out 2 hours of your time, or 2.5 hours of your time. So barakallahu feek for that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in our battle. And really it's a battle to maintain our chastity and to maintain our izzah and our purity in these difficult times. نسأل الله اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك واحفظنا في هذه الفتن في هذا الزمن. نسأل الله أن يتقبل منا صالح الأعمال وأن يتوفقنا إلى ما يحب ويرضى. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.